and welcome to Morning Movie News, where things in Hollywood continue to be incredibly slow. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm really feeling this long stretch of time without any comic book movies or fan movies. Now, there are apparently some hotly anticipated movies on the horizon during the holiday season, which we're going to discuss today, according to polling, but I'm not really seeing it in terms of online interest. So that's something for us to debate in the comments down below. But despite this slowdown period, I'm actually pretty proud of myself because I was able to put together an episode that I think is still pretty darn interesting. I hope you agree. Some of you felt I cheated a little bit yesterday with a lot of TV discussion, and I am going to discuss Gotham Season 2 a little bit, but in relation to two movie news stories. Well, one story and one viewer question. But anyway, let's get started with the biggest story of the day. Really the only movie news story that's gotten any traction, I'd say, in the last 24 hours. And that is the Fast and Furious franchise. Both a positive development and a potentially negative, alarming development. So let's start out with the good news, okay? So it was just announced this morning that Fast and Furious 7, or Furious 7, has done incredibly well on home demand. We just recently talked about whether or not Hollywood pays attention to how films do, post-theatrical release. That was a viewer question. And I'm sure that Universal will continue to be quite happy with the Fast and Furious franchise because Furious 7 just debuted in the home entertainment market to the tune of $50 million. It makes it totally worth all the money they've spent advertising this release, and it's just more money for the coffers of Universal, which must be full at this point. They must have had to build new coffers. They've made so much money this year. I mean, let's see how Jurassic World does when that becomes available for home entertainment. But anyway, the trades are going around saying that the Fast and Furious franchise is the most valuable franchise that Universal has, which is interesting because, of course, they have the Despicable Me movies, and they also have, they have several billion-dollar movies this year. One, of course, is Furious 7, also Jurassic World, so that franchise, I think, is coming back into importance or prominence for them. And then, again, as I said, the Despicable Me movies where the Minions made $1 billion as well. But that's, with Illumination Entertainment, so Universal probably has to share some of the profits with them, obviously. But anyway, Fast and Furious is apparently still the crown jewel of the Universal crown, which is very heavy at this point. But anyway, of course, they obviously want to make more movies, and they actually talked about Fast and Furious 8. I covered that when the movie came out. It's going to maybe take place in New York City. Kurt Russell's going to return. Helen Mirren might be, the Shaw matriarch. In other words, the Shaw mommy. Come in there and, pick up her kids, Luke Evans and Jason Statham, and take down Vin Diesel. And then, of course, there's the big question mark of what they're going to do with Paul Walker's role because he's no longer part of the franchise. Do you replace him or just let the crew roll as it is? But anyway, they can't find a director for this movie, which I find absolutely amazing. That they can't find someone to direct Fast and Furious 8, considering the last movie just made over $1 billion, like 1.5 billion, which is like so close. Like we all were wondering, how is it not overtaken the Avengers? Because it's just 7 million behind for like months. But anyway, according to Hollywood, it did not overtake it, and I believe it's like the fourth highest grossing film of all time. So anyway, they can't find anybody to direct the follow-up. So what's happening? Well, you would think that James Wan would direct it, right? Well, we already know that James Wan's very busy. He just started filming The Conjuring 2. He Instagrammed some photos and Facebooked them doing an exorcism on the set. I'd be like, if they did an exorcism on the set that I was on, I'd have to have a serious thought about whether or not I wanted to continue on that set. But anyway, James Wan apparently in his contract, it's been revealed, was signed on to do 8 and 9 in the Fast and Furious franchise. But for some reason, Universal was like, you made us so much money, and we know it was stressful to make Fast and Furious 7. It's okay, we let you go. And we let you go apparently to Warner Brothers. As I said when I was talking about Colin Trevorrow, who directed Jurassic World, going over to Star Wars, who the heck is protecting, the valuable directors over at Universal, right? Like, who is their sheepdog to keep the wolves, the other studios, from getting to their very valuable sheep? But they're going left and right. They're losing directors to other studios. It's ridiculous. So they lost James Wan to Warner Brothers, where he's making The Conjuring 2 and then Aquaman, right? So they were like, but we're not worried. Who wouldn't want to direct Fast and Furious 8? Right? Well, apparently no one. So especially after Justin Lin, who of course directed several Fast and Furious movies, didn't return to the franchise, but instead is directing Star Trek 3, aka Star Trek Beyond, or whatever they eventually call it. So that made Universal panic, and according to the trades, they then returned to James Wan and they said, we said it was okay if you left, but apparently we can't find anyone else to direct this, so we will offer you an obscene amount of money. The exact quote in the trades is a life-altering amount of money. To which apparently James Wan said, no thank you. And the rumor is because he had a serious toll was taken on his health while filming Furious 7 because of all the problems. It was just a stressful movie to make. Paul Walker's death, of course, required a lot of it to be remade and rethought out. And then apparently Vin Diesel is difficult to work with, and he has like a lot of ideas and gives a lot of notes. And I think that it's not so cool to kind of rag on Vin Diesel because so far it's worked, right? I mean, the Fast and Furious movies make an increasing amount of money every time they come out. So I guess whatever Vin Diesel, his demand of excellence is a good one, and it pays off, literally. So I don't think that's so cool that Universal would, kind of throw him under the bus like that. And if I were Vin Diesel and his team, I'd be like, what the hell? They also said that they're worried at Universal that Vin Diesel is going to want to direct. And I do think that's worrisome. And I'd be like, you can't cut your teeth directing a Fast and Furious movie, Vin Diesel. Put your producer hat back on. And I think that Vin Diesel would probably not risk the franchise to do that. I mean, he'd be insane because it's his not only is it his main source of income, but it's the thing that's propping up his career. Because all the other movies he makes don't do anywhere near as well as the Fast and Furious movies. So if he wants to continue to be someone who can get any meeting he wants in Hollywood and be someone that Universal calls up, he needs, Marvel calls up for, not only to voice Groot, but potentially play an Inhuman, right? There's been that rumor circulating for a while. He needs to have the Fast and Furious franchise not only in his corner, but a success in his corner. So I don't think he would jeopardize it like that. And the fact that that would even be put in the article and would be something that goes around town is really damaging and I think offensive. But nevertheless, they can't find anyone to direct this thing, and they're hoping to maybe find a Colin Trevorrow or a Gareth Edwards. Why don't they call up Gareth Evans, right, from the Raid movies? The guy, no one will hire him. There must be something we don't know about what happens when he gets into a meeting, right? Because this is ridiculous. But that's actually who I would recommend that they call, because he did some really good car chases. Also maybe Christopher McQuarrie, because the car chase sequence in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation was one of the best I've ever seen. So I'd be like, hire that guy. But, I think he's pretty much on Tom Cruise's, payroll. Like, almost everything he does is with Tom Cruise. But I would consider bringing him over. I'd be like, you've done one franchise, why don't you come over and do another? So there are options that aren't, dusting off some newbie director and rolling the dice with them. Because for every Gareth Edwards and Colin Trevorrow, there's someone who just absolutely crashes and burns, and we don't even remember their name off the top of our heads because they never go anywhere. But anyway, here's how I want to end my discussion on finding a director for Fast and Furious 8, right? I think this is another repercussion of the internet audience really, shaping the way movies are perceived, right? Like, I think that a lot of directors, and perhaps this has to do with James Wan and his decision not to continue with the franchise as well, don't want to turn into Michael Bay. Like, Michael Bay, don't feel sad for Michael Bay. He makes tons of money. He's very successful. However, I'm sure that it bothers Michael Bay that he's often the butt of many jokes, Like, he's laughing all the way to the bank, but still, when you cash those checks, people are laughing at you. And I think that's got to hurt a little bit. So I think that people are worried about becoming Michael Bay. They're like, well, if I can just have tens of millions of dollars instead of hundreds of millions of dollars and have people's respect, I'm okay with that, right? So I think, then I will not completely ruin my chances of maybe someday winning an Oscar, right? Although I think James Wan would have to do a pretty amazing career turnaround to get himself to be an Oscar. I mean, he would just be the most amazing director of all time. But I mean, Steven Spielberg was able to do that eventually, so who knows? But I think that also probably influenced James Wan's decision and was another reason that a lot of people maybe don't want to go into the Fast and Furious franchise, because even though it's beloved by some, it is also ridiculed by others, right? So I think there's a real problem these days where it used to be, if a movie franchise is successful, who doesn't want to work on that, right? But it's no longer, success is no longer like the only thing that people care about. And that's game changing, right? And we're starting to see this filter into, the way studios interact with the public, right? I think the access is very slowly being cut off a little bit, which is worrisome. And I think that Hollywood is making a mistake doing that. But for instance, I tweeted the other day that Hotel Transylvania 2 has no Thursday night showings. It's only debuting on Friday, and the reviews for it can't come out until late Thursday, 7 p.m. And so, I think that this is something Sony did for The Perfect Guy. I think Sony, for the most part, with the exception of their upcoming Bond film, has discontinued Thursday night shows because they want to keep word of mouth from snowballing in a negative fashion against their movies, right? Fox, for the Scorch Trials, really clamped down on people's access to that movie as well in the press. Because I think, as I discussed with you, at the end of the summer, Hollywood had a real problem where they looked at some of the films that underperformed and they were like, man, it used to be that at least some people would show up for these movies, but with the advent of social media, the word spreads too quickly if a movie sucks, and these things just, they're DOA, and that's something new for Hollywood. However, I would say the ultimate goal, the ultimate cure for this isn't to limit the audience's access to a movie in advance, but to make good movies, right? I mean, on the flip side, Fox is very proud of The Martian. They've been showing that all over the film festival circuit. I got to see it at a regular press screening on Monday already, 2 weeks before the thing comes out. So that's very advanced early access. So I think it's going to be interesting to see Hollywood try to maintain some level of control, but I think they have to realize that they're going to go the way of books and music and politics and all these things, and that they're just going to have to deal with the beast. And as I said in a recent Morning Movie News, the Lego documentary, the Brickumentary, was a fantastic example of how going open source ultimately paid off big time for the Lego company and actually brought it back from the brink of having to close its doors. So I think that Hollywood probably will eventually get there, but I think we're looking at a really painful period until they do. All right, so that's the first story of the day, and I'm very curious to your thoughts on that. All right, so, boy, that was a lot of coverage on that, but I think there's really a lot going on there. All right, so what are the other stories of the day? Well, how about this? Did you know that on Saturday, it's Batman Day? I had no idea it was Batman Day until DC Entertainment sent me an email, and they were like, are you ready for Batman Day? And I was like, ready? I didn't even know it was coming. So this Saturday, basically what DC has done is they've taken Free Comic Book Day, which was supposed to be a wonderful thing for the entire industry, and basically taken it over or copied it for the purpose of promoting just their character, right? So I have mixed feelings on that. On the one hand, I'm like, well, that's kind of selfish and not in the spirit of team play and for the betterment of the industry as a whole. But on the other side, the industry is having major problems, the comic book industry. So whatever they can do to keep it going and prop it up, please do. Although I would say they could release more comic books. The last 2 weeks I've been trying to buy comic books. I shop on Comixology now. I've gone digital. I love reading them on my iPad, actually. I really highly recommend it. But there's so few comics coming out that I used to usually buy 10 to 11 comics a week, and like yesterday I bought 4. That's like unheard of. And it's not even the end of the month. Usually if there's like an odd number of weeks, there's like this like garbage week where they're like, we didn't plan for this, there's just a few comics. Fine, I can understand that every once in a while, but 2 weeks in a row in the middle of a month is very alarming indeed. But anyway, it's Batman Day, it's a Saturday, and so this is what you can do. You can go on, I have the website linked down below in the video description. You can find out if there's going to be an appearance or a signing near near where you are, so you can go there. Also, your local comic book store should be doing something for Batman Day, some kind of discount on Batman comics, Batman movies maybe, just, action figures, go see what's going on. And then apparently, there are also some stores that are participating. So I can't guarantee that they're actually participating in Batman Day, but if you're at the mall or you're near this kind of store, why not just pop in and be like, what are you doing for Batman Day? So they're Barnes & Noble. These are listed on the website, okay? But they're Barnes & Noble. That's pretty interesting. BAM. I've never heard of the company BAM. FYE, For Your Entertainment. I can't believe that store still exists. I thought all music stores went out of business. GameStop, maybe you can get like a discount on like a Rocksteady game. I don't know. Again, I'm not guaranteeing you anything, but you might as well go in there and see. Hastings, I don't know what that company does. Hot Topic, I think maybe it's all the Batman universe. So recently Hot Topic had like a Harley Quinn line, so maybe you can get something like that. And then Spencer's, which I'm sure has a lot of Batman stuff. So I think it's worth going to check out. And I think it's interesting, though. I don't know why Batman Day is on September 26th. It's nowhere near when the movie's coming out. There's nothing Batman-y happening right now. I mean, I guess Gotham Season 2 just kicked off, but I think that there's a big difference between who reads the comics and who likes that show, because I know a lot of you really hate it, but I love it. I just watched the first episode of season 2 last night. I was late because I saw The Martian on Monday, and so I couldn't watch Gotham when it aired. And then I wanted to watch Scream Queens when it aired, and The Muppets. So last night I watched Gotham season 2 episode 1. It's cheesy as hell, but I really like it. I'm a big Batman Rogues Gallery fan, as I think most people are, and I really like the way they handle those characters. I think that, they do change a number of things from canon, but I just look at it, as I tweeted to a number of people last night, as an Elseworlds story, right? And I think that they do some really interesting things of playing with the Batman mythology, and I'm really interested to see how the show progresses. I think there's some great acting there, and I think if you just let go and just enjoy your time in a Batman universe, there's really a lot to like there. I just really love the show. I think it's so much fun. I think it's very well written. I know some of you will be like, that's ridiculous. But I think, for instance, if you just look at the discussion about a calling and, juxtaposing the Gordon and the characters of Jim Gordon and Bruce Wayne in that context, and that's why you're like, who would stay in Gotham? To see that and to have that in that light, I think it's really interesting. And I like seeing characters that I love so much played with in a different way and a different angle shown on them. I think it's really good. And again, if you look at it as an Elseworld story, and I miss those deeply, the rumor is that Dan DiDio doesn't like Elseworld stories, and that's why they discontinued them. But Elseworld stories used to be some of my favorite things that they did at DC, and that's how I view the Gotham show. More on that show momentarily, but let's go to the other story of the day, and then Gotham factors into our viewer question. So the third story of the day, and so if you go and celebrate Batman Day, please let me know, and all of us know what you did on Twitter. I think that's the best way to do it. So anyway, and there's my Twitter handle if you haven't noticed. All right, so the third story of the day is about anticipated movies. And I said, Hollywood feels they have 2 really hot movies coming up, and that's The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 and Star Wars The Force Awakens. So how do they feel this way? Well, there's this company apparently called Piedmont, and they went and they polled like 2,000 to 3,000 people. And they have a scale that they measure movies on, in terms of anticipation. They have 1 to 1,000. And the highest score they ever got so far was for Avengers Age of Ultron, which is 509. And so they're like, see, we know what we're doing. And that's to give you some perspective of the numbers that we just got for Mockingjay Part 2 and Star Wars. But I would like to point out that despite that being the highest number that they ever got on this Jurassic World, Furious 7, and Inside Out all outperformed, Furious 7 and Jurassic World outperformed the Avengers on a global scale, and Jurassic World outperformed Avengers domestically as well. So I'd be like, well, where was Jurassic World on your scale, Piedmont? And they'd be like, next question. But anyway, so I would take this with a grain of salt. But it is interesting, especially for those of you who I know are rooting for these movies. So this is where things I think some of you are going to be like, yes, and some of you are going to be like, you're right, Grace, this is a total crock. So Mockingjay Part 2 has come in with a 514, so that's higher than Avengers Age of Ultron, which is interesting because the Mockingjay, the Hunger Games grosses up until this point have never come close to the Avengers opening weekends. So this would the Mockingjay would have to come up significantly. It would have to come up 50 million from the first 2 movies and like 70 to 80 million from the Mockingjay Part 1. And considering how many people were disappointed in Mockingjay Part 1, I find that a little hard to believe. But then get this, Star Wars has a lower score than both Mockingjay Part 2 and Avengers Age of Ultron. That came in at a 495. So according to this survey, more people are excited to see Mockingjay Part 2 and will likely see Mockingjay Part 2 than Star Wars The Force Awakens. So we'll see if this plays out. But this is, what Hollywood's going with right now. The headline is that people are just excited about those movies. But when you start to really dig into the numbers, I think they seem a little suspicious. And so we'll see. I don't see Star Wars performing at the levels that are being predicted. I think it's going to be big, obviously, but I don't think it's going to be quite as big as they feel. Because you know what I see again and again? I see people who are big Star Wars fans being excited about it, but then I see a whole bunch of people who aren't familiar with the franchise or were burned by the prequels, and they're not being won over. I think there's a real black and white situation here where, it's not gray. There isn't a level of grays in terms of interest. Either you're a Star Wars fan and you can't wait, or you're not a huge Star Wars fan and you're like kind of neutral on it. So we'll see. And as for Mockingjay Part 2, I have a hard time believing that the response to Mockingjay Part 1, the mixed response to Mockingjay Part 1, wouldn't take a toll on the performance of Mockingjay Part 2. But we will see. The box office will answer all on these issues. All right, so the viewer question comes from Sam D. And Sam D said, Grace, what do you have, what do you have to, sometimes people have typos when they're typing on their phone, so I have to figure it out, so sorry. So Sam D says, Grace, what do you have to say about Emma Roberts turning down the role for Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad to do Scream Queens? Do you like the almost casting choice? And do you think she made a good decision? Hope you answer my question. Smiley face. All right, so I looked into this because I was like, what? Margot Robbie was not the first choice for Harley Quinn? And I have to say, I don't think this is true. I can't find Emma Roberts having said it anywhere herself, and I only see it noted as trivia. I think someone went onto IMDb and made that up, because apparently maybe there's some credibility to other people being considered for the role of Harley Quinn, but I don't think they would ever go with Emma Roberts. I think she's too young. She's too young for Jared Leto's Joker, and also she's never been in a successful movie, right? So it's really hard to have her make the jump. And if you want to just prove that Emma Roberts does not have any star power, just look at the ratings for Scream Queens, which were a disappointment, unfortunately. So I don't think that this was ever actually something that anybody considered, and I think it's something that a fan probably made up, or an Emma Roberts fan, or someone just wanting to mess with everybody. So I don't think that's the case at all, and so it's not really worth speculating on. But I don't think she would have been a good choice, and that's part of what or a reasonable or a viable choice, which is also what makes me question the validity of that rumor. I think Margot Robbie is a great choice for Harley Quinn, and I think we'll see. I don't know what direction the character is going to go in. I think Margot Robbie could send it further in the sex pot direction, but we'll see. I saw shades of Harley Quinn in her character in Focus, so I'm very curious to see what she does with the character. But I think in terms of getting people interested in the character, very smart choice. But anyway, the reason I'm circling back to Gotham Season 2 is that there's another rumor going around that Barbara, Gordon's ex, who's now in Arkham, could be their Harley Quinn, right? So some people are talking about that. I heard a different rumor. I heard that she might actually become the Joker of this Elseworlds universe and be a female Joker, because the people who make Gotham said, just because Jerome acts like the Joker doesn't mean he is the Joker. They said they think it's very possible that someone else would see his shtick and go, I like that, I think I can improve upon it, and that would be the actual Joker. So they're still very much keeping us guessing as to who the Joker of this series will be. We know it's going to be someone close in age to Bruce Wayne, because of course eventually these two will fight each other. He could be a little bit older though, because they're not necessarily peers. But as for Barbara on Gotham, I think the character is much more likable as a villain. I think that actress is much better in this type of role, and the character has finally become not only someone that's watchable, but actually somewhat interesting. I do see shades of Harley Quinn a little bit, but that's just because she's a blonde hanging out in Arkham, right? I think the way she acts is very different than Harley Quinn, though. I mean, I don't know. It depends on the version of Harley Quinn you're talking about. But she doesn't have the ditzy angle going on at all. So I'm curious to see what direction they take the character in. I think she seems very much like a Batman female villain, but I don't know if she's going to be... I don't think she's going to be Harley Quinn. They could go the Joker route. I believe it was in the Flashpoint series, they did have Martha Wayne turn into the Joker. I thought that was really fascinating. So there is a precedent set for it. So you could have a female Joker, and I think that would be a really interesting way to go, and also really establish this as an Elseworlds type story. So that's actually what I would be rooting for between the two rumors, but I don't think they would be crazy enough to make Barbara into their Harley, because I think Warner Brothers would be very upset about that as a whole, and of course Gotham is a Warner Brothers television show, and they have to really protect the Margot Robbie version, which I think, if they're careful, could be quite lucrative for them. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for your questions, Sam. Thank you everybody so much. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.